January 7th changed everything. Homes reduced to ash, a community shattered. But out of the devastation, a new story is being written, not just about what we lost, but about what we choose to build next. These are real, raw, honest conversations rooted in lived experience, telling the story behind the headlines, shining a light on the unseen struggles so many still face, and uniting around solutions to move us forward. This is a journey of healing and recovery, of rebuilding not just homes, but hope. By sharing these stories, we create the attention, pressure, and momentum needed to drive real, lasting change. Because on the other side of the greatest disaster will be the greatest rebuild our city has ever seen. Together, we rise, story by story, step by step, brick by brick.
From a small level to a large level, it's only through pain and challenge and sadness and grief that we can find growth and further development of who we are as people and the connections and the interactions that you have with the most unexpected individuals.
So since January 8th, the date that unfortunately I lost my family home in the Palisades fire, it's no secret that I've been very public about sharing my family's story, really as a means of healing for myself and the journey that we're on, and also as a means of trying to serve and do my part to help my neighbors, our community, who are navigating this same challenging season. And part of the story that I've been sharing is doing my best to express such an enormous gratitude for the first responders and the Los Angeles Fire Department that I witnessed take a stand so above and beyond what you would expect that day for my neighbors, for our street, for my family home. And in an interesting kind of series of events, call it fate, I ended up shouting out on a news channel, one of the public news networks, just an appreciation for FR 115, because that number has been burned in my mind since that day, because it was that truck, and specifically the two individuals in that truck that day that stopped for the first time on the Wednesday morning, that listened to my plead, that decided to take a stand, that all of a sudden got reinforcements, and that I watched really define what being a hero really means in person through this shared experience that is the most traumatic of my life and one that will ever be defining in my life. And through sharing on social media, someone saw the fire engine and actually connected me to the individual that day on January 8th that took that stand. And we had a chance to trade some text messages and Instagram DMs and a couple short phone calls. And in this episode of Brick by Brick, it's the first time I get a chance to see face to face the individual that took a stand with us that day ever since January 8th when we lost our home, and get a chance to have a real raw conversation, emotional perspective from a true hero and a first responder of what it's like from their vantage point through the Palisades fires and everything they went through in that devastation and have been going through, tied and attached to so many of us that are navigating the aftermath. This is an emotional conversation. It's an enlightening conversation. It's an insightful conversation. It's a conversation I know will add value to anybody, not only that's navigating the Palisades and LA fires, but really anybody that's navigated severe loss and wants a greater appreciation for those that show up and serve out of just the desire to contribute every single day. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Los Angeles Fire Department hero in my book, Andrew Mott. So Andrew, I think it just dawned on me. I know we've spoken on the phone, I think, a couple times, and we've traded text messages, but I don't think I've actually seen your face, or we've been face to face since January 8th. I think this is the first time we're actually seeing each other, which is interesting because I feel like we have like a connection, and just from our messages and our conversations. So very much looking forward today. I guess I just want to kick off by saying a huge thank you expressing gratitude, not only for what you do every day, as a first responder, as a member of, Los Angeles Fire Department, but even beyond that. I know we'll probably get into this in the conversation today. I just want to say thank you on behalf of my family for everything you did and your team did on that day, January 7th, January 8th, for my family specifically. And I know we'll probably get into that story and all the families that represent kind of my neighbors in the Palisades community and what you do every day for families like ours. And, thank you for being willing to do this, get on and actually have a conversation as actually the first time we get a chance to really connect since that moment recorded, which I know is untraditional and maybe a little weird.
Hey, we'll get through it.
But thank you for all of that and being willing to be with us here today. And we'll see where the conversation goes. And I guess before we get into all of that and you as the firefighter and the first responder and all the stuff I'm sure we're going to get into as it relates to Palisades Fire, let's maybe start light. Who's Andrew outside of LAFD? Give us that.
Definitely the first thing that comes to mind is traveler. I'm a huge traveler, explorer of the world. I've been to 133 countries. I've worked in probably 50 or 60 countries doing...
Wait, 133 you've been to?
Yeah, traveled to 133. So
that might be the biggest number out of anybody I've ever met, and I thought I knew a lot of travelers.
Well, it's definitely not the biggest number out of the friend group I keep in touch with, because they are incredibly avid travelers. I have multiple friends that have been to every country in the world, so I look up to them, and I'm on my own path, and I'm super grateful for the ways that I've been able to navigate this world and the experiences that have brought me to every one of those countries. It's been everywhere from work, travel, leisure. I did some contracting work. I also did most of it was humanitarian work in nature, so earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, all throughout the world. And honestly, like that is what has transformed me into who I am today, is just the opportunity to work amongst different cultures and meet different people and different viewpoints, and all coming together to kind of culminate that into my own outlook on life and outlook on the world. And I'm just super grateful for all that. So that is the number one thing that comes to mind when I think of who is Andrew. Yeah, but for the last 18 years, I've called myself a firefighter. I started in Ohio originally. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. So I started my firefighting career there in 2008, and ever since then, I've been firefighting. But in between, there's been time periods where I've lived overseas. I've lived in probably 5 or 6 different countries, and so it's just been a journey of navigating everything life has to offer. So super grateful for that.
So the humanitarian piece, that's interesting. What made you start in that direction? How long have you been doing that type of work outside of firefighting?
Well, initially, I don't know if it was necessarily by accident, but I was in Haiti during the 2010 Haitian earthquakes, and 400,000 something people died, and it was insanity, absolute mayhem and sad destruction. And I didn't have any previous, I was a firefighter already, and I was also trained in like USAR work, urban search and rescue work, and medical. I was a paramedic already. But it was really that experience in that time period there that really instilled in me the massive need that exists in other countries, and the way that I can kind of work my my skills, training, and experience into those scenarios and be a benefit to people.
Mm-hmm.
I just found a shared love of bringing together the travel aspect with the firefighting and kind of rescue work, and finding out that doing so in other countries really brings the best of both worlds in regards to being able to interact with other people and cultures, and also be able to help them in their time of most need. So it's been incredible. The friendships and the relationships I've developed because of that has been something I will never forget and never take for granted. And most recently I worked in Ukraine during the war there. I also did that in Iraq in 2014. I went to Iraq, and for the latter part of the war against ISIS in Iraq, I lived in Iraq and did a lot of paramedic work in combat areas. And so I transitioned that experience into working in Ukraine when that war broke out. So it's just, a lot of varied experiences.
I had no idea. I mean, the word that comes to my mind just hearing all of that is perspective. And the amount of perspective you must have at a young age is tremendous. And this is maybe a challenging question, but like, what would be some of maybe the most unexpected perspective you've gained as a person through all of that work?
Perspective is a word I love reflecting on, because I think it's the basis of a lot of conflict, both personal and shared amongst each other, but also just on the global scale. I think really, if with an increase in perspective on a global scale, I think we could fix so much suffering that goes on in this world. And so for me, I think even just from the very first time I left the US was when I was 19 years old. And I went to Uganda, and that, going from, suburbia, Ohio, to traveling across the world to Uganda, was an experience still to this day that I don't think I could ever fully put into words, in regards to how it transformed my perspective, how it transformed my path forward in life, and the drive that I had to really just be of service to people. And the capacity of me doing that has changed over the years as I've developed my thoughts and beliefs and mindsets. But the heart of it, of just being of service, is what really has stayed true to what I find great fulfillment in. And so I think the biggest, when I just sum it all together, is the biggest perspective shift that I've encountered is just the tremendous, and it's so hard to really grasp what this means when I say it, but the humility that you experience when you meet other people in the worst of situations, literally have just lost everything that they could ever have hoped for, and the humility that they have, and the humility that they maintain, and the fact that they find a way to show huge gratitude towards me for this most small act, or what I see as this most small act, but they just surround me with gratitude and thankfulness and gifts and this, and I don't fully understand it, because I feel like, well, no, I'm just coming to help. But they, like, truly, like, on a visceral level, like, they truly feel the act of me leaving my family and leaving my life in the US, being on an airplane, flying all the way across the world to be of service to them. And time and time again, I started, in various countries and various cultures, I started realizing that that was really a common thread. And so as I tie that into my perspective on the world and on humanity, I just feel like we all share this desire to connect with the other, and to connect with someone else who can come down and just reach us at our level, and really just impact us on a completely raw human level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, even just reflecting since the Palisades, like, it was, I mean, well, how many years now? It's like 15, 17 years that I've been doing this work. And I don't think there's been a few, like probably two or three other experiences, but I don't think there's been another experience that has been so close to home, that has brought up the emotions that I've experienced in some of the overseas work I've done.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's why this hit me in such a raw way, is that I've always been able to kind of compartmentalize those emotions of the things I've experienced overseas. But realizing here that a lot of those emotions were coming back up, and then I would drive away, and within 10 minutes I'd be back in my norm, where I live, where I'm from, like where I call home. And that was a complete reality shift of like, wow, this is home, and this is hurting the people around me. So that was shocking to try to come to peace with what that meant and what that felt like. So it was, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and I want to go there for sure. You just opened up so many thoughts in my mind just with even
No,
your
I believe it. Yeah.
with your backstory in terms of there's so much I feel connected and kind of shared philosophy on the world and experience and perspective shift. And I'm looking at even the hourglass behind your shoulder. I had that exact same hourglass, believe it or not,
Really?
on my desk in my my prior office in
I
the
love it.
Palisades.
That's awesome.
So to feel connected, even though obviously we only had kind of, one shared experience we'll get
Yeah.
to. But in terms of firefighting, so give us that journey for you. Did you always want to be a firefighter? What made you make that leap?
Yeah.
What
I mean, it really
made you
was
stay in that
early
lane
on.
for 15, 17 years?
Yeah, it was super early on. I think I was like a freshman in high school, and I watched a movie. I watched Ladder 49,
Hmm.
and the badass firefighters in that movie, and the crazy experiences that they went through, and the way that they fought, and the way that they wrestled with emotions, and the way that they helped people, and all of that was like, yes, like this is what I want to do. And I was, a young 14-year-old guy at that point, and I thought that reality would be exactly like the movie, and it wasn't. Suburbia, Ohio doesn't provide the same level of adventure or excitement that I saw in that movie. And so as I went through that journey, I started finding, a lot of incredible people that had such a heart for the job, for firefighting, and such a desire to learn more. And I loved that being able to learn from them, people with greater experience. But then I also loved kind of making it my own and making the career kind of what I desired to get out of it. Um, and I think that's something that I never intended at the beginning. But as I went through my high school years, I got on as we call it an explorer. So like a, unpaid trainee basically through your local fire department, just to kind of get some experience and exposure and meet the people, see what the job is like, and see if it's a fit for you. And then once I was nearing graduation, I went to the fire academy at night and got my certifications. And then after I graduated high school, I got my first job 2 months later as a firefighter, and I never looked back. I mean, it was pretty cool. My first job was in the suburbs of Cincinnati, Ohio, and it was, I felt very fresh, and I got yelled at a lot of times, but it allowed me to grow up, I think, in ways that I never really would have done without that job. So super
Hmm.
grateful for that.
I can only imagine. I mean, that's a long time doing what you're doing, and then you multiply that times all of the service work around the world and the disaster work around the world. I mean, tremendous amount of experience, for any age. And I appreciate how you said kind of the Palisades fire, the LA fires hit different and hit close to home. And I see the parallel from kind of the devastation that maybe we're used to experiencing outside of our country walls, and now all of a sudden, a lot of those similarities, right, are what we're navigating even still currently in our own backyard. But you mentioned kind of in hindsight, right, or in reflection. I'm curious if we go to kind of January 7th, January 8th, January 9th, right? At what point did you personally realize that was different than any other, right, normal fire call, right, that you're responding to over those 15, 17 years?
Yeah. Um, Pretty early on. I remember, I'll probably never forget it, but I remember first thing in the morning, I show up to work at 6 a.m. and I remember opening my door when I'm pulling up, and the door just whips open, and I was working in the valley that day, and I just was like, whoa, like the door got ripped out of my hands because of the wind. And I was on the phone with the partner I was going to be working with that day, Tony, and I was like, dude, I hope a brush fire doesn't happen today. This wind is gnarly. And he was
Mhm.
like, yeah, 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 I know. And he wasn't there yet. And then he pulled up and he was like, dude, this is crazy. The wind was just ripping, and we were like, my goodness, like we hope a brush fire doesn't happen today. We already had resources pre-deployed, so we anticipated the winds. We anticipated something. If something were to happen, we wanted to be ready. So we all had that in our
Mhm.
mind. But in LA, I mean, that's a norm. Like that happens
Mhm.
often, that we pre-deploy in anticipation for weather. So that part wasn't anything out of the ordinary, but it was just like, man, this wind is different. There's something different about this. And then and that was it. We talked about that, and that was it. We moved on. And then yeah, I mean, the morning went on. We just were running normal calls, and then we started hearing. I don't even know if we heard the initial dispatch at all, but we started hearing the first engine companies give their size up of what was going on, and it was wild how quickly their size up changed from the initial I'm not going to give numbers. I don't remember what the numbers were, but from the initial time they first got eyes on to 5 minutes later, the change in their tone and the change in urgency of their voice, and also the change in how big the fire was wild. It caught our ears, and we were like, well. And then very quickly after that, as things started developing very quick, very fast, we kept hearing, evacuation, and people can't get out of their homes. The home's on fire. This is happening. This is happening. We were just like, oh, not that's not what we hear all the time on the
Hmm.
radio during a brush fire. And so it definitely perked us up, and we very quickly started realizing, well, this is not normal. And especially with the winds, like, it's so hard to wrap your head around what those winds were like. I mean, you were out there in them for multiple days, and it's just without that feeling of what that was like in your eyes and your ears and your nose and your face. I mean, it was different. It was not normal. And so coming across those winds, coming across the embers, the way the smoke was traveling so quickly, so horizontally, I mean, it was totally different. We look at all those factors, and that kind of gives us our gauge on how we might see this progress throughout the next few hours. And so Tony and I were like, dude, this is not going in the right direction. And so we were like, we should go. So we did. We called our dispatch, and they gave us permission to go. So we went. And as we were driving there, we probably had a 30-minute drive there from the valley, and it just kept increasing in severity. And it was like, this is not good. And it was quickly, when we took Sunset to get there, and when we were going down Sunset, um, there was times where you could see the smoke, and then there was times where just by the geography you couldn't. Um, but every single time we would get another peak of the smoke, it would just be more severe. And we were like, whoa, like, what is going on? And then when we got to the command post on PCH, we were probably weren't even there for 10 minutes, which again is not normal. But it was just the urgency that they were trying to move people through, and they just needed all hands on deck to get up there and to try to get some kind of control over what was going on. And, fortunately, we knew a lot of the people we saw at the command post, and we all just looked at it. We were looking at each other like, this is crazy. This is wild. And the way that the wind was ripping through the command post, the smoke was coming over, like, it was just developing super fast. And
Hmm.
usually we like to approach things once we have a game plan in place in regards to where units are going, what their assignment's going to be, what their work is going to be like, to maintain that accountability, to maintain the tracking of the progress of the work. But you could tell that in that moment, they just wanted all people to get up there and to do whatever kind of good work they could. Um, so we had an assignment, and we went to work, and we were told that we would be in the Palisades Highlands, and that we would be doing everything we could to try to stop the spread from one house to the other. We were on a resource that wasn't for it wasn't like for deep brush, like to take a long hose line. It just has a hose reel on the back.
Hmm.
So we were really just hopping pretty quickly from house to house to house, trying to do everything we could for each individual situation. And so it was kind of unique to be in a resource that had so much mobility and so much ability to move so quickly, because once you deploy hose off of a normal engine, it takes time to pack it back up and to move on to the next one. But with that hose reel, we were really bumping as fast as we could. But my goodness, like,
Hmm.
it was just crazy with the wind and the ineffectiveness of our stream, of our hose stream. Like, you would spray the water, and the water would get pushed right back at you.
Hmm.
And it was just super defeating, very often, of like, man, what, this shouldn't it happen? This shouldn't be happening. Why is it going like this? Like, usually the water goes forward and it puts the fire out, but that is not what was happening. So it was just super strange, super strange. A lot of other things happened that alluded to just the gravity of the situation. So it
Hmm.
was, yeah, we realized it pretty quick.
I mean, I can only imagine. And it's interesting because you and I have this tremendous shared experience. And for everybody who this falls upon and who watches this or listens to this, if you've heard me tell my story, and Andrew, I've been fairly vocal about it, right, on social media, traditional media, like doing my best to kind of use my story, I guess, as an example, right, of so many families and what we're going through. And for anybody that has heard me share the story, you actually already know part of Andrew's role in the story, whether you know it or not. So to kind of connect the dots here, and then I have a question, Andrew, I've been wanting to ask like ever since that day to you, and I'm curious what you share. But you weren't just any firefighter up in Highlands that day. Like, you were the firefighter that chose to stop when I ran into the street and waved down your and Tony's car, you know, and I'll forever remember, burned into my brain, like FR 115, you know, which was that resource you called it, right? Your truck with that hose you're describing that day. And, you know, for me, it was Wednesday morning, right? It was actually after the horrific part, right? I mean, the horrific part, and I'm sure you were in it somewhere in the area. But for me, I was on the street, right, going up and down on Tuesday night when it was like the apocalypse and everything, like everything was on fire, right? I mean, the palm trees were on fire. The wall behind our street was on fire. It came up through the other side. Everything was on fire, right? And it was me and one other neighbor, Alex Swedelson, who is a volunteer first responder, but also lived down the street. And we were the two on the street kind of checking in on each other. And we made it, you know, go through all the horrific stuff. Like, you know, and I don't even know if you know this, maybe you know it from what I've shared, but I know we got connected after, but like, you know, we had garden hoses and that was working for Tuesday night, you know, and I have that visceral memory of like my garden hose in my hand in my front yard when it just stopped working. And I thought it was a kink, right? So I ran and tried to find the kink, and then I went and like, no, all the hoses stopped working because obviously the water had stopped. Running up and down at that point, not having anybody in the area. And I won't go into the whole story. I've shared it pretty publicly, but like, you know, buckets of pool water and like doing our best to put out, and we put out like a lot of tiny little fires. But the point is like we made it. Like we, you know, for my story, like we made it through the hell part. And you may not know this. I had just ran up the street, a couple streets, and connected to a neighbor's Wi-Fi because our power was out. There was no Wi-Fi. There is no data up there. I just called my wife, Karis, to tell her that we made it. And I was like, I think we made it. Ran back down the street, and that's when the house at the end of our street on Calle de Serra started to smoke. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I ran multiple blocks and found another fire truck, but they had just finished all their water. And like, you know, in that moment, the waters weren't working in the hydrants, right? So you guys were on like rotations. I don't know where you were going, but it was like, you know, they would disappear down the street and 15 minutes later, you would pray they came back with a truck full of water. And I watched it in slow motion with nobody by myself, right? As it went from like house to house. And I remember, I mean, and this is where you come in and I want to hear, you drove down the street. You were the first truck, right? You drove down the street. I ran out in the street wave. I don't know what I was doing. I don't know what I said or what I was doing, but you stopped, right? Like you stopped, and it was you and Tony, FR 115, stopped. And not only did you stop, like you listened, and not only did you listen, that you're like, okay. And then I don't know what you did or who you are or what your role is. But all of a sudden it was like you started bringing in reinforcements. Like all of a sudden the giant engines were coming into my street, right? And I mean, at one point we had, I don't even know how many giant engines, right, doing the rotations, right? One would empty their water and then they'd get out and disappear, and you know, we'd pray they came back, and then they came back, you know, and so for me, it was an interesting thing to experience from my perception of you stopping, getting out, saying whatever you said to whoever you said, right? And having these engines start to show up and take this like ultimate stand on my neighbor's house. Because this was before it got to my house. I mean, it was like the stand from like 3 houses down, right? Where it's like, so help me understand your view, because I know my view of this shared experience. We didn't know each other before. I didn't even know your name until at the end of the moment. we got connected, I think, because I shared FR 115, and I think I threw out a blanket thank you on a news
That's
station.
true. Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know. I was like, thank you FR 115 on the news, and next thing I know, someone on Instagram connected us, right? Which is what led us here. So even though we don't know each other, we actually have what in my world, in your life, it's maybe work, right, and one family and things you do every day. But in my world, it's the most traumatic experience in my life and what will forever be a very defining moment in my family's life. And like you were that person or the conduit to the team, right? Because I know it was a team that day. So I guess my and that's for those of you guys that are listening, like that's Andrew. He's not just a first responder or a member of LAFD or a great humanitarian. He is the right person in my family story, right? That showed me like what heroism looks like firsthand. But I'm curious your version. I've been very vocal of like what I went through from my lens and in my brain is that perspective, going back to your word perspective. Give me your lens, right? Of that moment and that day and that shared experience and like your perspective, just openly, honestly, like I'd love to hear your version of my story or our story.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super grateful for you being so vocal about your story and being the voice for a lot of people that may not, number one, have a platform, or number two, have the desire to speak up in a public platform. So super grateful that you're willing to and wanting to do that. I'm so glad that we've been able to connect in the way that we have. And I would have never thought that random guy that decided to stay on top of a burning community was going to be eventually my friend, because we always think that, why are these people staying? Like, why are they staying? What are they going to accomplish? What are they doing here? But at the end of the day, and this is what I've learned a lot about the Palisades community in general. Like, not only was it your home, but it's the whole community. It's the whole, everything that's provided your family, everything that's provided your kids. And so it started to come full picture to me once I saw what the Palisades community is. And when we met, it was at a time where, if we take it back, I mean, we probably met, I don't know, probably like 3 or 4 in the afternoon on the next day, when the sun, had already gone through the sky. The day started positively, what we felt like. We felt like the worst was behind us. Everything we had been through the night before for the last 24 hours was
crazy, unexplainable.
Yeah, you can't put words to it. But for us, on our side and our perspective, it was not. It was a huge punch in the gut of realizing that we can't fix every single thing we come to. LA City is a big, busy department. We go on hundreds, thousands of calls a day, and 99.9% of those, we don't leave those calls until they're fixed, and we're able to fix the problem. We show up, people are screaming, people are scared, but we're able to fix the problem. We find the solution, we find the way, and we fix it. But what really stood out to me, and I know it's shared by a lot of people I work with, is that whole night we weren't fixing anything. Over and over and over again, there was nothing that we were fixing. And I feel like that was confusing to us at first, but then by the morning it was frustrating as hell to realize we weren't fixing any of this. Mm-hmm. And so I think in my own heart, it was incredibly defeating to have that feeling of showing up as the fire department and there's houses on fire, and that we weren't able to stop the fire before it grew to the extent that it did. And so I think when the sun rose that morning, we felt defeated. We felt completely drained of any possibility that we'd be able to do more or do something. And so I think it was kind of like the dawn was kind of like a reemergence of trying to search for something that would uplift the spirits of what was going on there, and trying to search for something that we could actually effectively help with. Because there were so many times where, multiple residents stayed, and there were so many times where they would ask us to help them, but their house is already on fire. And we're like the amount of times we said, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry. There's literally nothing I can do. Like, there's not. And it was just super defeating to have to say that. Fortunately, we did meet multiple other people on the Palisades area that we circled back and visited them, and some of their homes did survive,
Mhm.
and super grateful for that. But the overarching reality was that these people's homes were not surviving. And so I think we first saw you when it was nighttime
Okay.
on the Tuesday night, and we noted we keep note of where people are because
Mm.
obviously it's our job to come in and save you if
Yeah.
anything were to happen.
Like, we have some crazy homeowner
Yeah.
running up and down the street. I'm sure that radio was interesting.
So we knew you were there.
I'm glad. It makes me feel a little better that at least you guys knew I was there. That's good. It's good to
Yeah, and Tony was
know.
the one that actually saw you. He was like, "Dude, there's a homeowner still here on this street." And I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, it was a late Tuesday night, and I was like, "Why is he still here?" And I was like, "Well, we'll check back in a couple hours and see if he left." Because a lot of homeowners would stay and then realize, okay, well, I need to go, and they'd evacuate. But once we noticed your persistence, when we kept circling back and you were still there, we were like, dude, number one, we were like, all right, well, this guy's doing all right on his street. None of the houses at that point were
We we
affected
yeah,
yet.
we made it
Yeah,
through. Like we literally saved
yeah.
the street for that. It was crazy. Yeah.
So there was kind of a sense of like, all right, well, he's handling it. He's getting shit done and handling it. And so we kind of were hoping that that would continue along that way. And as you know, as the morning went on, we probably, I mean, I don't even know, probably 30 or 40 homes we tried to help with that morning. And, again, just defeat, defeat, defeat. And fortunately, there's a few things that we were able to help with that did make a difference. And, a few days later, we went back and visited the homes, and they still stood. So that was good. But in the moment, you don't know. You don't know what the effect of your work is going to be. But then as we kept circling back and seeing you, and I think that was the first time you actually approached us and asked for help. And I can't exactly remember where Tony and I were going. Yeah, I can't remember. But I just remember realizing that, I mean, at that point, like you worked your butt off. Like you were exhausted, and you could see that in your face. You were wearing the mask, and you were just. I could feel the disparity in your voice of, like, in my mind, in my reaction of what you said to me. It felt like this meant more to you than just a house, and
Mhm.
so there was multiple other people that we helped throughout this experience, obviously, but I just really, Tony and I really just wanted to see if there was anything we could do. And when we stopped, I didn't know if there was anything we could do, um, but I knew that at least I could try, and at least I could say I tried at the end of the day. And so we stopped. I mean, that's really all it came down to. We just decided to stop and see what the heck you wanted. Um, but yeah, I mean, as you explained to us your situation, it was calm at that point, fortunately. But you told us about the house a few doors, like 4 or 5 houses down. And obviously, what you said made complete sense. And as what we've already seen, it just keeps hopping from house to house to house. And that's how it's been going on. And the house previously provides kindling for the next house. And then that house provides kindling for the next house. And that's just the way it was going. And it all depended on the wind direction. And so once we, saw that there might be a chance for us to actually stop the progression of this because it was so far away from your home, um, it just it was just a desire to maintain hope and to see if we could have a positive come out of everything we had just been through. So yeah, I mean, fortunately, I know a few people that I work with, and we had been working alongside a lot of people throughout the last night. All in your whole community was like predominantly LA City. So the benefit of that is that we know each other, and we know how each other operate. We know what we need to say on the radio. We know all that stuff, and so I was able to voice the urgency of the situation and try to redirect any resources that I could to your home. The only thing that did not come to fruition that I wish it did is I tried to get a water tender to come directly to your home that would have provided us a lot of water to be able to help instead of having to do those shuttle runs. Because like you mentioned, it took 15, 20 minutes every time. to get more water. But engine 15 came, engine 105 came, and I knew a few people on those rigs, and I just explained to them the situation. And really, we just wanted to find some hope in what was going on and really just make a stand for those few homes on your block that were still standing. Yeah, I mean, and also the willingness of you to jump in there and help us. I mean, you were at first you were running around like you were running ahead of us, just trying to do everything you could to save your house. And as we started piecing it all together of like, man, this guy has worked so hard for everything on this block, and let's be a part of this. Like, let's stand with him, stand next to him, and do this. And so again, I made some more radio communications, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get the water tender. They were doing so many loops around the whole community, all night long, all day long, and we weren't able to get them up. But just knowing that at least we had two other engines that were there willing to help us, and I mean, it wasn't so much the amount of people; it was the water. We needed the water, and just their ability to kind of bounce back and forth from the water tenders back to your house made it hopeful that maybe this would work.
Mhm.
And like I kept saying, it all depends on where that wall goes. When we were up there, I just kept telling you that that wall is what we're depending on. Um, I was hoping that that wall would fall within the same house that was burning, and the amount of trees that we cut down next to your house to try to reduce the kindling and the amount of wood that would be able to catch and ladder into your house. Um, just the amount of stuff that we tried and tried and tried over and over. We kept trying to re-strategize, and as the house next to yours kept building in strength and intensity, we kept trying to put water on the side of your house. Um, and yeah, I remember Tony and I, we kept having these like side eyes glances of looking at each other, being like, "Is this gonna work? Like, it's looking good." And then we were still in the backyard, and we just had this extended period of like, dude, I think this is gonna work. Like, this is looking really good. Um, it was at that point where we had sufficient water, because we were able to conserve it at that point. We were just putting it on your house when it would get too hot. We already took down all the wood and all the trees next door, so that wasn't an issue. Yeah, so we had a lot of hope that this would work. Yeah, and then I remember when that wall fell down, there was so much gratitude because it fell in the perfect way. The wall fell perfectly. And I was like, oh my goodness, like the wall is down and is no longer a threat.
And it didn't crack the window. I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
remember
It
that. Like
fell.
the wall fell in and it somehow landed on a window in my first floor and
And
didn't
it
crack
held.
it. Yeah, it held.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was awesome. And we felt good. And we went inside to check. And that's when we saw the wisps of smoke coming out of your ceiling vents in the second floor. I mean, and we looked at, like, Tony and I immediately looked at each other and we were like, oh no. Like our face, like, literally just sank because we knew exactly what that meant. And on normal days, normal circumstances, it's very hard to attack a attic fire from we do it from inside of the house, but it's very hard to get a hold of an attic fire before it spreads throughout the attic. Coupled on this day with the winds and what we didn't see happen was the way that the chimney fell was directly onto your roof,
Mhm.
and the way that the wind was blowing it was blowing from where the chimney fell on your roof and the chimney was on fire towards the other full extent of your house. So the way that within 2 minutes it just spread all the smoke, all the fire throughout your attic, and we just looked at each other and we were like, oh no. And that's, I think, when you saw us start sprinting. Yeah, we pushed things very far that day.
Yeah.
There's things that we don't do in firefighting, and we did them that day. It took a while for me to accept that this was not going to be successful. And I remember the amount of times that you just kept inquiring about, like, what can I do? What should I do? Do you need this? Do you need that? You were just so overly helpful, and it was so hard. And I finally did it, but it was so hard to be like, Blake, this is not going to happen.
Yeah. No, I mean, I remember that conversation, and
Yeah.
to say you guys took a stand is an understatement. You said the mask. I actually didn't even think about this till 5 minutes before we spoke, but it literally that was the mask, that was the
Oh,
hat,
really?
that was the gear. Um,
Yeah.
I haven't touched it since the 8th when I got home. It smells like smoke. It's
Wow,
literally
really?
been wadded up on the garage floor because you can't get the smell out of it. But I didn't throw it away for whatever reason. But to say you guys took a stand, and for everybody that's watching this, and again, it's a gratitude, Andrew, for you and your team. And I know it's your role, and I know it's your job, and I know it's, your service, but like, it was so far above and beyond, like so far above and beyond. The engines showing up, the team that was putting in the back and forth from the water, starting whatever 4 houses down, right, 3 houses down, trying to stop all of it, to when it got close to my house, like literally taking out chain. I mean, I remember like it went and grabbed, like, where'd the chainsaw come from? I mean, literally pulled chainsaws out of the truck and start physically chainsawing the hedge line and pulling this out to try to prevent the jump. You and Tony running, you're like, can I go in your house? I'm like, yes, go in my house. Like dragging that hose from your truck through my living room and standing to the back, like ready to, when it fell. I mean, I have the videos from my phone of you guys in my, my guest room upstairs, like fighting the fire off from inside my, my home. And then when it went into the attic, and you and you know what that means, right? And I had heard that just being up there for the 48 hours prior, like everything started in the attic. When it went in the attic, it's like you didn't even try because it was too hard to stop it. But to watch, and I don't know if you were the first, but to watch you and the team run to the car, and I did not ask for that. Like, I asked for a lot that day, and I kept, what do we got to do? And you got to help, and like, but I didn't ask, and you guys ran to the car, pulled oxygen tanks out of wherever, straight put on the mask, put on the tanks, and ran into my burning attic. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can't remember the exact numbers, but there were a group of you like in my burning attic, trying to fight off on rotating water, right? And we're sitting there going like, oh, and that's where the water came in. It was, I mean, there's no, you said, what was the movie that inspired you to become a firefighter? The
Ladder 49.
Yeah, there's no scene in Ladder 49 or Backdraft or any firefighting movie I've ever seen in my life that even comes close to doing to like what I witnessed that day. I mean, it was like hero shit at the it doesn't get anymore. And I didn't honestly, and maybe I'm crazy, and some would probably agree with that statement on some levels, but like there was not a thought in my mind the entire time that we were not going to save it. It never crossed my mind from the minute I was there to the night by myself with Alex, and you're doing the rounds to all the way to the last minute, all the way until all the way until like the wall fell and we're in the room and pulled out the curtains. Like not a single thought ever crossed my mind that we weren't going to be successful. And it just didn't till that moment. And I don't remember if it was, I don't remember who was poking holes in. There were people in the attic with oxygen tanks, and there was someone poking holes, right, ventilating or whatever, my ceiling. And I remember the moment because it was someone poking holes, and we poked the hole, a fireball, right, came off the ceiling. And then I think it was you. I think he whispered to you, and I heard the whisper, like it was it's time. And then it wasn't until you said that to me, like, it's it. Like, we got to get out.
Well, and I mean, obviously your head was not in the attic, but the attic. So we don't do that in the attic. What we did that day.
No, like, I mean, you guys are in a burning attic. I mean,
well, the way that the fire was blowing so aggressively towards us, because obviously we were like in the middle part of your attic, and the fire was on the far side.
Yep.
The chimney that fell was on the far side. And so I'd be up there with the hose line and I would get it all out and I would be like, dude, this is sick. Like it's all out. And then literally within seconds, it would just like blow, like forcefully fire right at us. And it would just all ignite again. And the first time that happened, I was like, oh shoot, I got to do this again. So we got the hose back up there and we put it out again. And I look around and we have a thermal imaging camera that detects heat, and it looked pretty good because it got really smoky up there. Once you start extinguishing it gets really smoky, and so the thermal imaging was looking good, and I was like, dude, this is great. But my goodness, the way that wind was just blowing that chimney, the fire that was in that chimney just straight into your attic was insane. It was like literally like a blowtorch coming at your face, and that was super discouraging. And so that's where you mentioned pulling the ceiling. So that's when we went back towards where the chimney was, and we started pulling the ceiling in that bedroom underneath where the chimney had fallen, trying to get it from underneath. But then someone pulled, one of the other guys pulled the ceiling in the hallway, and that's when he had that fireball fall out. And we were like, dude, this is not good. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I've played the scenario over and over and over in my head about that chimney of like, what could we have done differently for that chimney to have fallen the way it did? And what could we have done differently to then have saved what was happening? Like, I really, such a,
Yeah. And I've, you can't help but have your mind go in those directions, sometimes. But I try not to let my mind go into the what if scenarios. Like, the way I look at it, we had that conversation. You guys didn't stop there. And I remember you're like, what do you need help? You're like, what can we help you get out? And, you literally were carrying, some of my photo albums and the stuff that me and my wife threw into our master bathroom shower. Right. And, carrying out, I have those photo albums, and, then all of a sudden, like all the team lined up. They're like, what can we help you get out? We got to get out. And they're like, throwing all the stuff out of the garage, out of a burning house, right? They're still carrying things out, loading up my truck. And, granted, I guess the biggest feeling from like the moment where it's like, okay, everything's out. And, I hit a point where I just shut down. I was physically exhausted, mentally exhausted, coming to terms with the fact this wasn't going to end the way I thought it was going to end. My truck was already overflowed and I couldn't fit anything else. And the thing that probably struck me the most is like in those last moments, I could tell that like you were like let down, and the team, Tony, and I don't remember all the other guys that were up there, but like, even though I was one of 50 houses that day or whatever the number was, and hundreds of thousands within Palisades, and thousands over 15 years, I knew in that moment, or I felt like you cared. Like you actually cared, and you actually gave it your all, right? And went above and beyond and rallied a team to do it. And that's why I want to say thank you, because that has to be rare. Like you don't have to, you're there for your work, you got other fires and other calls to go do, but the fact that you showed up the way you did what you did, went above and beyond the way you did, and did it because I believe you actually care. That was one of the biggest lessons and biggest things that I learned, right? On the power of, you say, like serving, giving, doing things for others, like power of people. And even though it didn't end the way that I wanted or hoped, right? Or thought up until that moment, from me to you, like, even though you might be playing like, what could we done differently, or like feeling defeated that you didn't save it, for me, there is a peace of mind in knowing without a doubt that on that day we tried.
Yeah.
And we did everything that we could within our means in the moment and beyond, and that's it. And the fact that I was able to drive off, and I'll get and having to live what we're living through with my family, my kids, and everything up until, for me, because we gave it our all, there is some element of comfort knowing that we gave it our all and it still ended this way. And I don't have any doubt or regret, right, on what could have been done different or should have been done different from our perspective. So for what it's worth, if that helps you or that helps the team or that helps where you started this conversation on like frustration and you're not able to fix it, you fixed a lot, you saved a lot, literally. But even in the instances where maybe the outcome isn't what we wanted, what you do and what you did and the effort alone does make a difference, or at least it makes a difference for me and my family. So I just wanted to share that perspective, me to you, and that's the conversation I've been wanting to have, since that moment.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, it was absolutely a team effort, and I'm so grateful for the other captains and firefighters that were willing to put in their best efforts to come and play a role in that. Super, super glad that so many people showed up to help. And I just, the hardest emotional part for me was just the part, like you mentioned, just helping you bring your family's stuff out of the house, and especially out of the garage, the kids' toys, the kids' bikes, and just seeing, like, I don't even know if it was seeing, but just feeling the mixed bag of emotions that you were just going through at that moment. Of, you could tell you were not thinking about where do you, like, because we keep asking you, like, what else do you want? What else do you want? And your house is gone. Like, you just were in a totally different world, totally different reality. And the amount of empathy I had for you was so strong. And I just wanted to, even on that day, I just wanted to sit down and have a conversation with you. I just wanted to hear more about that and what was going through your head. That is a hard part of what we go through, is that we don't often get to have that level of connection with the people that we come to help. And so, you lose out on deeply getting to understand what any experience means for those individuals. But I could just tell that your mind was very, very deep into a lot that was going through it. And yeah, I'm so sorry that we weren't able to.
There's no apology. I won't even accept that from you. So, I mean, it was, I'm glad we're able to have this conversation, and I hope it gets shared and people understand, and even there's no way I can articulate it here for like what I witnessed from you and the team and what we experienced that day. But hopefully it does shine a spotlight into what you guys do for people, right? And what you specifically and the team do for families, and what you did in this scenario for many of us in Palisades, and what you do every day. And I won't ask you or, put you on the spot, but like, I know, because I was there, that had the hydrants had water and any of those trucks been able just to hook it up right to the hydrant in front, at least for Calle de Serra, our street, right, it would be there today. And you don't have to answer that question, but like, I know that to be truth. And yeah, I mean, you guys did above and beyond with what we had to work with that day. And the fire did stop at my house, so I wish it stopped before, but like,
Understand.
I mean, it did. I mean, Nicole and David are amazing neighbors, and they have an awesome, family, and we're super close to my neighbors. And I mean, they're so appreciative of, the amount of water that was left in our house. It stopped the rest of the street. And they're so great. And you guys did do that, and the work we did there did stop it from going to the next house and the next house and the next house and the next house and the next house. So I just wanted to say that, and I guess and thank you for going there, and that helps give me some peace of mind and connect the dots from like your vantage point of this kind of very interesting, traumatic shared experience that allowed us to cross paths. What perspective do you want to give to like the rest of the Palisades? So like, this will inevitably go to and get shared probably with a bunch of people from the community, a bunch of families like mine that either lost everything and are navigating, or there's a bunch of families that didn't lose everything and they're still navigating all of the challenge, right? And
Yeah, for sure.
And everything, and we're all in this strange scenario. What perspective do you want to give? Like, if you had a microphone to everybody in the Palisades community currently in this season, what would you share?
So with all the work that I've done throughout the world, like, obviously I've seen areas and cities and communities that have been absolutely decimated by natural disasters or war. And what you start to notice, and the common thread that really weaves through every single experience of those, is the human nature of resiliency, the human nature of desiring connection, and the human nature of the ability to recover. And I found time and time and time again that from a small level to a large level, that it's only through pain and challenge and sadness and grief that we can find growth and further development of who we are as people and the connections and the interactions that you have with the most unexpected individuals.
Hmm.
And so I know that the Palisades was harmed that day. I know that the community experienced great loss and great grief. But I also know, and I've come to learn a lot about the Palisades community, and I also know that they have full ability and full autonomy to be resilient and to be absolute, or to make this experience an absolute tremendous opportunity for connection, community, and growth. And I think a lot of times the narrative can get stuck on the loss or the sadness of what happened. Um, but and a lot of it, this has been through just your stories and your platform of what you've done since then. But I'm super, I admire strongly the Palisades community and the way that they bond together in a common effort. And I hope that through this, that they can also find just a different perspective, a different story, a different mindset, um, of one that maybe saw that day, a person that saw that day from a different light. And I want each and every person affected by this experience to know that the fire department was here for you that day, and the fire department will continue to be here for you each and every day. Man, it's so hard to see a community suffer in a shared suffering. But what I love is the great opportunity that creates to share joy and share hope together.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, that's really my desire is that everyone can come together in a hopeful voice rather than a voice of despair, and that everyone can come together with knowledge and confidence that the future is truly what we make of it and truly what we choose it to be. Yeah. And so from the small level to the big level, I hope people continue to be involved. I hope that I can continue to be involved, and that, I mean, honestly, like, super grateful to have met so many members from the community, and just the humility that I've experienced through their words of gratitude, of their thanks and their gifts and their drop offs at the fire stations. Like, it's felt so strongly, and some days it's hard because obviously we feel like we didn't. I feel like we didn't do enough, or we couldn't do enough, um, and so I feel a slight guilt in receiving certain things that people, certain times people stop by the station and share their gratitude or share their food with us, and I just feel a certain sense of guilt. But I know that it's coming to us from a place of complete gratitude and just humility. So I want to share that back to them. So
Hmm.
I think that's it. Yeah.
I mean, it's so beautifully put, and I know we all put that kind of weight on ourselves,
Yeah.
but you got to let that go. We all got to let that go. Like, all we can do is all we can do. The best we can do is the best we can do, and if we do those two things, we got to let go of what happens after that. And whatever happens after that, that's where you got to lean into a little bit of faith, right? On even if it doesn't make sense, it's not what you want, it's not what you expect, or it creates pain. You got to choose the story that, well, maybe that's the way it's meant to be for some reason we might not know right now. Because if we don't choose that story, then we could beat ourselves up and carry a weight that's just too heavy. Um, you mentioned recovery. Obviously, you get to be around a lot of people that go through traumatic experiences and see people go through recovery. Is there any advice from your perspective, patterns you've seen, anything you want to share as people are going through kind of a recovery or a healing journey, right? For where we're at right now, right? Here we are coming up
Yeah.
on 5 months. I can't believe it's been almost 5 months. Like, any advice you'd want to share that you've seen help?
I mean, I think from on that standpoint, I think like setting your expectations properly is very important. Um, because I think after a event like that, you can easily lose hope, and to set your expectations in a area that will be easily not met can lead to a loss of hope again. So, setting your expectations that the community will rebuild, but the timeline won't be on your own desire of what that timeline looks like. The timeline is going to be, it's going to have fluctuations of positive, negative, slow, fast. It's going to be drawn out, and so I think in the meantime, and in the timeline between when the fire happened and when the community is back to where it was, I think to fill that time is an opportunity to develop community and to develop friends and to dive into those friends in the most with the most strength that you ever have. Because I mean, this life is really only what you make of it with the others around you.
Mhm.
You know, I'm sure you've been reminded since that day of how material possessions are not the end all be all to happiness. And that it's through family and connections with others that we find
Mhm.
the gratitude, the growth, the strength, and the courage to get through literally whatever comes our way. I have a lot of hope that the community will carry that into their future and that they can hold on to the idea that not allowing your expectations to get the best of you and just let the timeline play out as it will.
Mhm.
So,
I think that's super insightful. And I know it's kind of cliche, but it's true. Like, and it is very apparent for me in the journey this year is it's not about what you have. It's always about who you have.
yeah.
At the end of the day. And there is this really strange kind of collision that like loss and going through loss, especially when you go through like severe and devastating loss, it somehow also brings out like a light and another side of people and like a connection and all these things that you're saying at such a deeper level and a richer level. So it I wish it didn't. Like I wish it wasn't like going through such shared loss that kind of created this level of whatever empathy, connection, But it does, and I think that is a gift that kind of comes from the ashes you're describing. You use the word hope, which I love that word. It's kind of a word that I think encompasses this conversation and what we're trying to do with kind of this whole brick by brick. Is there anything else that's giving you hope right now? Like if you're looking at Palisades, community, what's happening, what you just beautifully said you wish is the future, what else is giving you hope?
I mean, honestly, my family, I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and being able to see the youth of our age go through their lives and their experiences. I mean, I think it's well proven that a lot can be learned through our children. Um, we can become better people. We can become better with each other, with our peers, just through all the lessons that we can learn through them. So seeing her explore and experience life from a fresh vantage point has been so uplifting to me. Um, and I think that in our adult minds and our adult worlds of all this stuff that we've already been through in our lives and all the ways that we've allowed that to build up and accumulate inside of who we are, that we can try to shed some of those things in times like this and bring it back to just the pure essence of love, connection, joy, peace, hope, gratitude, all those things, just coming back to the real essence of why we're here and what we're meant to be here for. So, I optimistically carry hope because at the end of the day, I mean, every community that I've been a part of in the world, every time I've seen people recover from negative experiences, I've always extraordinarily seen incredible stories arise from that in ways that people have taken the literal ashes and transformed them into the biggest opportunities for personal growth and expansion and connection with others. So I have no doubt that the stories within the Palisades community and within the other communities affected by these wildfires throughout LA won't have their own experiences and stories of great success in community, great success in friendship, and great success in taking your own understanding of life and ways that you view the world and building with upon that and really taking it to the next level. So that's where my hope lays. And yeah.
Andrew, I love it. I want to leave some time. I know we've kept you for a while, and this has been awesome and fulfilling for me, for sure. But I know anybody that takes the time to listen to this, and I do want to leave a minute to have you close out with anything else before we round out. But because you said family and because you said hope, you inspired me. So hold on one second. Give me 1 second. Hold on. So it was a little impromptu, but before we round out with some closing thoughts, you can come here for 1 second.
Hey.
Hi.
And this is Grayson.
Hi.
So you guys, this is Andrew. So he is one of the firefighters that was with us doing everything he could with his team to save our house that day. And I know I've told you stories about him, but we were just having a chat, and he was mentioning his family. So I wanted you guys to say, you can say hello.
Hello, thank you.
Hey. Hi, Grayson. Hi, Sadie.
Hi.
So good to see you guys.
Anything you want to say to Andrew?
Thank you. And this chat has been going on for 1 hour 14 minutes.
It has. We've been on here for a little bit. He sees the timer.
Have we taken too much of your dad's time?
Anything else you want to say, Sadie? Anything else, buddy?
Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You guys are amazing. Thank you guys so much for bringing so much light into the world and for being the people you are. So grateful to see you guys through social media. And I would love to meet you in person someday, okay?
You want to get together with him and his family one day?
Yeah.
Do
Does he have
something?
kids?
Yeah.
Sure.
Hey, Kate. Kate.
I'll be here in a second.
I hear Zara outside. Let me get Zara.
Hey, Zara. She's like, Dad, what are you doing?
This is Zara.
Hi, Zara.
His name is this boy's name is Grayson. Can you say hi?
Cool hat.
Thanks.
I love your hat.
That's rad.
Thanks.
This is Kate.
What's
Hey,
up?
Kate.
Hi.
So we'll all get together one day. We'll do something fun.
Beach.
Would you like that? Go to the
Ooh,
beach?
beach sounds amazing.
Beach.
Always love the beach.
I love it. Well, Zara, we were saying thank you to your dad for everything he does for our family and families throughout the community. So I hope you know your dad's a true hero. Make sure you tell him that sometimes, okay?
Okay?
Hi.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Jason.
You said
love
no.
I love it.
Oh.
Well, Andrew, we'll round out. I appreciate all the time. I appreciate who you are. I appreciate what you've done for us and what you continue to do and taking the time on this conversation. And anything else you want to leave us with? I know we've covered a lot and a lot of ground. Anything else on your mind or anything else you want to say to anybody who this lands on or anybody that it's shared with?
I mean, I'm just super grateful for the way you've remained engaged and the way that you've taken it upon yourself to really show up for others. I know it means the world to them. And I mean, I don't know how many times I can say it, but really just the hope that we can all share in knowing that there are always better days ahead and that we can always remain confident in that knowledge, because I mean, it's really the only path forward. And depending on each other, depending on family, those are all things that can help us just accelerate into better days. So super excited to see the ways that community can come together, and super excited to see what they can create together. And yeah, I'm here for it, and I'm so glad that you are too.
Well, today was a special conversation. It was an impactful conversation, and I think it's going to go beyond just, for me, my family, and our story. But I know anybody listening to this that's navigating, whether it's the Palisades fire or the LA fires or just loss in general, is going to get value from everything you gave us. And I do believe that just shared experience, right? Shared experience, shining a spotlight on what we're going through as people, how we're processing, how we're healing, how we're recovering, unearthing real challenges and not being afraid just to lay it all out and say, this is the stuff, at least gets it out there to where we can start to solve them together. No one person needs to have an answer, but collectively, I think we can figure it out from a community level beyond. And, again, call me crazy, but I think if we can create enough of this and enough conversation and enough connection and enough community, we can create enough attention and pressure to go not only rebuild, but drive real change that we need to. And that's my hope with these conversations. And thank you for contributing to that, for all of your time today. And maybe, just maybe, there is a reason FR 115 came by and we crossed each other's path more so than just the moment on January 8th. And I think today is definitely a door to that. So I look forward to continuing the relationship and the conversation as we move forward. So I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Blake. Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm super, super looking forward to the future.
Cool. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you for listening to this story. Every one we share is a brick laid in truth. And this movement, it's bigger than any one of us. It has to be built by all of us. If you know someone whose story deserves to be heard, maybe a neighbor, a friend, a family still fighting, you can nominate them at www.brickbybrick.la. Their voice matters and their truth belongs here. You might be asking how you can help. Share. Help us shine a light on what needs to be seen, because attention creates pressure. Pressure creates accountability, and accountability drives change. Thank you for listening and for standing with us. Your presence here means more than you know, because you're not just watching a story, you're now part of it. Together, we rise, story by story, step by step, brick by brick.